Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon newscast. It is October the 6th. It is Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and we are here again. I'm Rebecca. I am joined by my wonderful colleagues, Bill Reel and Radio Free Mormon. It has been another huge week of news in Mormonism. How are you, Bill, tonight?
I am doing so great, Rebecca. How are you?
Awesome. I'm fabulous. And really, the person we should be concerned about is Radio Free Mormon.
Yes.
How the hell are you watching
Yes.
all those sessions of conference and then reporting on them? Are you okay? Can you even
I'm not
function?
sure. All the test results have not come back in, but so far what has come back in looks okay, at least within
Wow.
that realm. So anyway, yes, what a weekend I had. And what a weekend we all had, at least as many of you as joined me. And there are actually a surprising amount of people. At least I thought so. So I was grateful for all the people who wanted to watch live and who've watched since then, and getting my hot takes on General Conference. At the end of every session, bang, I go live. And I tell you all about the notes I've been furiously making while General Conference was going on right before that.
I feel like you're a staple now. Like people count on you. Like they're, you know what? I'm just going to go out of town and I know that RFM's got it covered. And if there's anything I need to hear, I can just speed through one of his broadcasts. So you really have taken one for the team over and over, and we appreciate you quite a bit. So
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you.
yeah, it's good. So we do have quite a bit of news even today. Even I said that sounds like I'm talking speaking of General Conference. Even right. So one thing I was going to say. Let's see. I go back one. Oh, okay. Here we go. I was going to draw attention just really quickly before I read the stories that it is today President Nelson's viewing at the conference center in Salt Lake. Ends at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. There is still time to get over there if you are interested in doing this. I understand it's been greatly attended, thousands of people, and it moves very quickly. I've been reading, some information on it. You just kind of go in, security, walk past, pay your respects, tip your hat, walk out. So if anybody wants to go, there it is. The other stories,
Rebecca,
yes.
I don't know about you, but at this point in time, I'm feeling kind of bad about all the times I said that Russell Nelson looked like the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, well, everybody tries to put their best foot forward when they're in the coffin, but it doesn't always work out that way. So if any of you guys went today, report back in the chat. I'd be very curious. We are going to cover quite a bit of things tonight. We're going to move quickly. General Conference highlights. No temple for you. Something big that came out of conference. LDS Church sends an apostle to Michigan. Is the family proclamation doctrine? LDS Church as both the persecuted and the persecutor. Revelation-free process of choosing the next prophet, and reinventing Mormonism. I didn't tell you who is doing each story. We'll leave some element of surprise, but I will tell you that the first story, General Conference highlights, of course, is none other. He can't get enough. Radio Free Mormon.
It is I. Thank you for letting me know. I wasn't sure which story was mine, actually. But we've got some highlights here from General Conference. When I'm reporting over the weekend, there's no clips for me to play because I'm going live right after. But I went back and I got some clips of General Conference that I did talk about that I thought were noteworthy. And this is where I said that, I'll just say it for the first time here. The controversial talks came at the end of conference this time. There were 3 controversial talks. There's at least 1 or 2 others elsewhere, but the 3 main, I think, controversial talks all happened in the Sunday afternoon session of General Conference. And so the first one I want to talk about is Elder Bednar, because Elder Bednar has now brought his moral agency shtick to prime time. Okay, that's the first story. The second one is Elder Godoy, who's of the 70. He reveals, perhaps inadvertently, how heartless the Mormon church really is. And number 3, President Oaks promotes the proclamation, then cries like a little boy. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic or facetious sense, because he did. And it shocked me. And it made me think, oh my gosh, this guy actually is a human being. All right. So let's go ahead and go to the first one if we can. Let me see if I can even move. I can do that. Look at that. I can do that, Bill. Number 1, Elder Bednar brings moral agency to primetime. Now, most of you know that there's a clip that's circulated far and wide of Elder Bednar doing this in a different country. And I'm not sure what the country was, but I know it's not in General Conference is the thing. It's at a local or area kind of meeting, talking about how moral agency means that you have the freedom to do what we tell you to do. Okay. Seriously, because agency is this huge thing. If you don't know, if you're not a member of the church, it's a very, very basic, fundamental precept in Mormonism is this idea of agency. We believe that the war in heaven was fought over this, that God was in favor of agency and Satan wasn't. So that's how important agency is. Okay, but in Mormonism, of course, they really don't want you to have agency. It's a strange, it's an awkward fitting robe of a doctrine on Mormonism today, where it's very much you do what we tell you to do. So along comes Elder Bednar and says, hey, agency is really moral agency, and moral agency really means you have the freedom to do what we tell you to do. In other words, choose the right code for what we tell you to do, right? So he says this in a couple of clips here in General Conference. He brings it now to General Conference for the entire church to hear and read about. And the first clip is here, and then we'll play the second clip in a bit.
What the Doctrine and Covenants refers to.
Give me 1 second. The sound there was not what I wanted it to be.
Okay.
I'm not sure why.
I think he got a new tie. It's kind of a snazzy tie he's got on. It's like three-dimensional. Did you notice his tie, Rebecca?
Did I notice his tie?
Yeah.
I didn't really notice.
Really? Did you watch him?
I am watching, but
Well, I meant, did you?
oh, no.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
It's an eye-catching tie. I think that's the snazziest tie I've ever seen Elder Bednar wear.
Let's try this.
That I can't hear.
No.
You still don't hear it.
No
No, I heard
sound.
it
All
the
we
first
can
time.
see is the tie.
I heard it the first time. This time I didn't hear it.
Yeah, the first time it was playing on my speakers, though. It wasn't playing.
But we could hear it the first time. So I think this is by design. There's probably something embedded in the clip, so we can't replay it.
And daughters. This essential principle also is described in the scriptures as agency and the freedom to choose and to act. The term moral agency is instructive. Synonyms for the word moral include good, honest, and virtuous. Synonyms for the word agency include action, activity, and work. Hence, moral agency can be understood as the ability and privilege to choose and act for ourselves in ways that are good, honest, virtuous, and true.
Boom. See, he had it. And then he added that last clause. And he added that last clause on purpose because he has now defined agency, the freedom to choose, as the freedom not to choose. He has defined freedom as servitude. It's remarkable, really. But now it's much more important because it's in General Conference. I'll give you another clip from a little bit later on in the same talk where he elaborates upon that theme. But I did want to say this idea of moral agency. I had not been aware that the term moral agency actually is in the scriptures. I had thought that he took free agency, which is not found in the scriptures, and substituted another expression, which is not found in the scriptures. But no, moral agency is found in Doctrine and Covenants 101:78. There's nothing about it to me that suggests that it's any different kind of agency. I mean, I think the agency that we're usually talking about when we're talking about gospel agency is the freedom to choose right and wrong, not to choose, I don't know what your favorite color is or who your best friend is. They're moral choices, right? Any agency about choice, if it's important in a gospel sense, it's going to have a moral component to it, right or wrong, good or bad. And I have no reason to think that calling it moral agency is doing anything other than defining it in the way it's always been defined anyway. So it says moral agency, it's Doctrine and Covenants 101:78. And if you look at the context, you can go ahead and do that later. I'm sorry, we kind of got a lot of news to get to, but it's found there in verse 78 where it says that every man may act in doctrine and principle pertaining to futurity according to the moral agency which I have given unto him. So there's nothing about this other than this one instance, apparently. Agency has moral in front of it. And from that, Elder Bednar sees the opportunity to try and turn the definition of agency around 180 degrees so it means the opposite of what it has from the beginning. Those are my thoughts. Any thoughts from you?
It just used to be free agency, right? Free agency. That's all it was. Growing up, free agency. And then suddenly it becomes moral agency. There's nothing free about that. You're absolutely right, RFM. You are free to do as we tell you. So I missed free agency. I could use that against my parents. So yeah, I have my free agency, right? Kids can't do that today.
That's why they're clamping down on it.
That's why they're clamping down. People like me got away with things, like one too many cupcakes or something. Yeah, I have my free agency. Now I can't say I have my moral agency, and they can say, well, that means I'm telling you can't have a cupcake. Simplistically, I'm just saying I miss the good old days.
I've done a couple podcasts on this topic, and there's enough talks if you go back in time, and you don't have to go back that far. But you go back in time and you see all these talks on free agency, and they speak to this idea that we all get we're responsible to choose the right. We all understand that we came here to prove ourselves, and this is our mortal probation. We get all that. But so many of the talks articulated that free agency was that we were not to be pressured or coerced, that we had to show Heavenly Father that without any manipulation, without any heavy-handed pressure, that we were going to just on our own choose to follow him. And most of those speakers, when they addressed free agency, said that it was essential that it be designed that way. And so to have Bednar come along and say, actually, there was no free agency, there's moral agency, and moral agency is that we beat you guys up all the time telling you what you have to do, and you'd have to do it. You're free to choose what we tell you to do, like you said, it's such a contradiction to what past church leaders, church manuals, church doctrine explained to us, taught us.
Yeah. And I cannot say if this was his original talk and if it was written months ago, or if he saw his opportunity, that there was a hole in the line and he decided to go for the end zone and bring this up in this talk while there is no first presidency and only a quorum of 12 apostles with 14 apostles in it.
What do you think will happen if he becomes a leader, if he becomes the leader in the church? This will be his hobby horse that he will now have put throughout the church's curriculum.
Well, yeah. And, he's welcome to. I think that he thinks he's more clever than he is. I think that he doesn't think other people will see what he's doing. And maybe that's true for some, but to me, it's patently obvious. To you, it's patently obvious, Bill. It's patently obvious to you, Rebecca. I suppose it's probably obvious to everybody out there watching the show who knows anything about this issue. But I just don't think it's going to wash. People can see when they're taking away their freedom under the guise of saying, we're giving you your freedom.
And that's Satan's plan, as they're pointing out in the chat. We've always known that. So that'll be interesting. I would say I'm 99.9% sure that he will end up in the first presidency. That's my prediction right now.
Well, he'll have to claw his way in because they don't like him any more than we do. That's what I think. Nobody likes Bednar. So why would you have him in your extra special 3-person club? Let me see here. So we've got this. I wanted to say this about the next clip. I believe it's on the next slide, that there's a second clip. It's also a brief clip. And here's Elder Bednar hitting the same theme again.
May I suggest that in the scriptures, the modifying word moral is not merely an adjective, but perhaps also a divine directive about how our agency should be used. A familiar hymn is titled, "Choose the Right for a Reason." We have not been blessed with moral agency to do whatever we want, whenever we will. Rather, according to the Father's plan, we have received moral agency to seek after and act in accordance with eternal truth.
Is he cutting it fine enough for you? I think he's way over the line. I think this is a penalty.
I feel like there's going to be a new primary song called Moral Agency. I am choosing it. My moral agency. I'm looking for it.
And you're the one to write it too, because you're great with the
Maybe
music and the
so.
words. You are. I know. We've worked on some songs together.
We have.
Yes.
I'll say one last thing. Joseph Smith said, I teach them good principles and they govern themselves. And Bednar's idea of moral agency seems to be, at least in part, a contradiction to what the founding prophet taught.
Oh, yeah. You know, there are statements on both sides of this issue that anybody can draw from when they want to make this argument, and over here that they can draw from when they want to make this argument. To me, it is a massive confusion. And anybody who went to the temple before 1990 will get that. Okay, so what I want to say about this is, if you notice the very first part of that, he's actually making two arguments in that last little clip. The first one is the briefest one, and it's the stupidest one. I mean, they're all really bad, but this is horrible. He says he's talking about the expression moral agency. And he says, you know, moral doesn't just have to be an adjective. Well, of course it's an adjective. This guy used to be like a president of a university, didn't he? That's scary. He says, not just an adjective, but it's a divine command. How is moral? This is an injunctive moral. I've never heard of moral being used as some kind of a command, divine or otherwise. But he would like to interpret it that way, so that now it becomes God commanding you to use your agency to do the right thing, right? That was what he was getting at there. Can you play just that first part again, Bill? Is that possible?
May I suggest that in the scriptures, the modifying word moral is not merely an adjective, but perhaps also a divine directive about how our agency should be used.
No, you may not suggest that, good sir. Because that's ridiculous. Hey, you're the librarian. Rebecca, what do you think about using moral agency as a directive, a divine directive? Does that make sense in English to you?
Yeah, it makes no sense. And as we go on through the newscast, there are other situations where people are taking out words, adding words, using them in different ways, to kind of craft their meaning. So wiggly words, that's all I'll say. Everything is wiggly. It doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean.
Okay, well, the story with Elder Bednar continues from there. It gets deeper, folks. Yes, we've been out there beating the bushes and finding the facts. So here we have Elder Bednar. Now, Elder Bednar visited Grand Blanc, Michigan, or as a lot of them say, Grand Blanc, Michigan, where, of course, that horrible tragedy was just 8 days ago. So he's already visited there as an apostle, and media's there. We've got a clip of him here talking to the media, explaining why it is that he and the church thought it was important for him to come out personally to visit.
Elder David A. Bednar personally visiting the tragic site in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where fellow Latter-day Saints were killed and injured, running for their lives during a terrifying rampage of violence.
To hear their reactions as they heard the very loud noise as the truck came crashing through the building, the pop, pop, pop of the gunfire.
This is the first time a top church leader from Salt Lake has visited the charred remains and victims.
Why do you feel like it was important to be here? Because I don't think words are enough. The brethren wanted to have one of us come, because if we show up, I think that says more about our love for these people and our support than all of the sermons we could ever preach.
Elder.
So that's why he showed up. And that's a good sentiment. That makes sense to me. I appreciate that. It does make an impact if you actually show up than if you just talk about it.
Did he just use the term brethren? I thought we put that behind us. Yeah.
He did. I actually think he said brethren. It was even worse than brethren. But I know that Rebecca's over there. She's shaking her head as he's talking. Let's see if I can put this back up here on the stage. Maybe it's this other one. Excuse me. How about this one? Can you tell us about this, Rebecca? You actually broke the story on the newscast.
Well, again, all roads lead back to Africa and everything that he's saying. There was a horrible tragedy the third week of June in Lesotho. I'm never going to pronounce it right, but that's close, Africa, where a group on their way to a young women's conference in a minibus were involved in a horrific accident. And I think now I'm probably not going to get the numbers right, but the branch president and his wife, 2 of the young women's counselors, several of the girls, like to the tune of 11 members of the church, were killed.
11.
And yeah, and we, we reported on this because we found it interesting that Elder Bednar here in Michigan said, our words aren't enough. We have to come in person. Salt Lake didn't even send words to Africa. The area presidency there did put out a statement, expressing their condolences. And there was a 70 who officiated at the memorial that the prime minister attended there. But as far as Salt Lake proper, it was kind of mum's the word until 2 months later, almost 2 months, when some of the female leaders of the church went there and ministered to the group, and that was in the church news. But every time I hear them, talking about going to Michigan, I just kind of think, what happened to those? That's a huge loss of life in the church and young people, So I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is there. I don't know what the reasoning is, but a lot of people have taken note of that.
Do you have anything you want to say about this, Bill?
He just told you the truth. The truth is where we show up is how we indicate who we care about and who we love and who we support. And some things aren't important to us because that's the church way over there. And some things are important because they happen inside this boundary called the United States of America.
Yeah, I'll tell you that I had made note of it. By the way, when I say that Rebecca broke the story, I mean, this was her story on the show when we ran with the story. Not that she was the first person in all of media to come up with it, just so you know. But when that happened, and there were not senior leaders in the church who went over to comfort or for this funeral, which was, all these coffins in a row and a massive amount of people, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people. And the king, this is a kingdom. Lesotho, I understand, is a kingdom. And all these people, high-ranking people, are there for this funeral. And where there's not an apostle in sight. There's not a general authority in sight. They have an Area 70. He was actually, I believe, a counselor in an Area 70, which means over this area, it's like a step up from a stake president. So the area contains a number of stakes in it, right? And there's an area presidency there. That was, and probably lives there. So that was the highest ranking person who showed up from the church. Now that's one thing, okay, if that's the way you want to play it, okay. I might have done things differently. I would have done things differently. But then Michigan happens, which is horrific as well. There's less loss of life. And we have an apostle going over, and it's on the news. And I'm going, no, this is not a good look. And then I'm going through my feed, looking for clips of Elder Bednar being interviewed. And I find that, and I rolled my eyes and I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe he actually said it out loud.
Yeah, he said the quiet thing out loud, didn't he?
Yeah. Okay. So if we go to the next one, there's a few more slides on this. This was the, we don't have to play this clip, but we can. This was reported, I think, on June 23rd, a couple of days later, but it happened on June 21st. 11 Latter-day Saints died tragically in Lesotho. It's almost 4 months ago from today's date, which is October 6th, 2025. Did you mention that, Rebecca?
I think so. There's a few dates. A lot of people didn't hear anything about this till a week or so later because they were unclear how many people had been killed, exactly what had happened. And so the information was kind of trickling in. And I will say that I think it was Elder Rasband who did initially put out kind of a personal statement, not really as an apostle, but he said, my wife and I were sorry to hear this. So that's the most official, and it wasn't even official, thing that we had coming from Salt Lake. And as I said, everything else was there locally.
Is this a clip, Bill, on this slide?
It is a clip on the slides I have on this side, so I can put
I
this
want
up.
to play that.
Mhm.
I just, I think that this is important enough to cover in the detail it deserves.
We're learning new details about a deadly minibus crash in Africa. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints confirming today 11 people killed were members of the church, 9 young women, 2 leaders. The bus was carrying the group to a youth activity when it was involved in a crash with 2 other vehicles. It happened in the Kingdom of Lesotho over the weekend. In a statement, the Africa South Area Presidency said in part here, "Our hearts are heavy and we are saddened by this tragic accident. We extend our love and heartfelt condolences to the many families and friends who have been impacted by this tragedy."
Okay, there that goes. So that was when it was happening. Let me see here. Okay. Then September 6th, 2025, so a month ago, but it's 2.5 months after the accident, 2 LDS church leaders visited Lesotho. And that's how the church put it, is 2 LDS leaders visited Lesotho, and they put up a video on Instagram, and I would like to watch that because it takes on a very different kind of tone and meaning to me when I realize that these people didn't go out there until 2.5 months later, and still there's no senior leader, as in apostle, or even a 70, a general authority 70, first quorum of the 70, who apparently has gone to Africa in response to this.
You have the whole church praying for you.
Healing through Jesus Christ and his restored gospel is happening for those affected by the recent fatal minibus crash in Maputswe, Lesotho. On June 21st, 2025, a multi-vehicle accident in this southern African nation claimed the lives of 15 people, including 6 young women and 4 of their leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They were traveling to a youth activity. A few months later, the General President, who oversees nearly 32,000 congregations of children throughout the world, Susan H. Porter, traveled from Salt Lake City to mourn with those who mourn.
Jesus loves you. Yeah, love you.
She was accompanied by her son, Chris, and J. Annette Dennis of the Women's Organization of the Church, and her husband, Jorge. Among those killed in the accident was Moeti Molatedi, the branch president of the Maputswe congregation, and his wife, Moaketi. They left behind 3 young children, now being cared for by his brother and wife.
It's hard, isn't it? Yeah. And they are watching over you. Heavenly Father is so grateful for the work that you're doing, taking these children. Jesus Christ loves children. And you can pray every day to Heavenly Father to help you. When we heard about the accident, we were just really brokenhearted.
Mapule Takane served as the young women's leader of the girls, and after 2 months in the hospital, she was recently released and is recovering at her parents' home.
How has this experience been for you? So painful, but I have seen the mercy from God.
Sometimes that's when we really see God's hand in our lives.
Yes.
Is when hard things happen. And when you go back to church, there's going to be a big celebration of love and hugs and joy. And yes.
Another leader of the young women, Alfonsina Rakwane, remains in the hospital and is hopeful to return home soon.
And how many of you have lost family members? God loves each of you. He is sorry with you, very sorry. And he has embraced them. And they are happy because of the gift of Jesus Christ. I cried with you when I heard. And I am so sorry for your loss. Sister Dennis and I wanted to bring each of you young women a card with Jesus on it. And he's holding a light. And Jesus has said, I am the light of the world. He's the one that shows us the way to happiness, isn't he? On the back is a little message. So the top one is from President Nelson. He wanted to send a special message for us to bring to you. I express my love to each of you, dear family members and friends. Our prayers continue to be with you and your loved ones.
One day, there will be no more death. There will be no more crying. There will be no more tears. And God will wipe away the tears from your eyes because of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is like a big family. So if anyone suffers anywhere in the world, we all suffer and we want to help.
Well, at least he sent a postcard.
This is so calculated that they did not give any response. I mean, I would think it would be advertising 101, a freshman. Given the situation, you're a CEO of a company and there's a horrific loss of life. What do you do? Advertising 101, marketing, PR. Where was Aaron Sherinian? Why didn't they speak out? Honestly, why? There has to be some really, I'm such a conspiracy theorist, but there has to be.
I know, but you're basing it on the premise that there's intelligence going on there, and there isn't. They are dumb.
It
Given
looks
any
so
option,
bad.
they will always make the worst possible choice.
Yeah, and I have to address in the comments, I'm seeing some people saying, oh, they were too old to fly over. Not true. When we covered this story, we showed the year before, several of them have gone to talk about tithing to the saints. So they had gone to the, similar areas. So I don't believe that that's true. But I don't know, seeing that, when they said we were aware of you, we were crying.
Yes.
Where were the statements?
Where were you?
Some of them
What
are
were you doing that was so important? I'm sorry, Bill.
No, that's right. Some of them are too old, but not all of them are too old.
That's why they got Bednar and Rasband.
Or a general authority, even
Elder
if it's somebody from Salt Lake.
Huron.
Patrick Huron.
Yeah.
Elder Rasband's not super old. He can do. Can I play? Do you mind if we play the Bednar one more time, just so that people can be really clear on?
I think this is a big story.
This is.
It is. It's heartbreaking. That was very hard to watch.
David A. Bednar personally visiting the tragic site in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where fellow Latter-day Saints were killed and injured, running for their lives during a terrifying rampage of violence.
To hear their reactions as they heard the very loud noise as the truck came crashing through the building, the pop, pop, pop of the gunfire.
This is the first time a top church leader from Salt Lake has visited the charred remains and victims.
Why do you feel like it was important to be here? Because I don't think words are enough. The brethren wanted to have one of us come because if we show up, I think that says more about our love for these people and our support than all of the sermons we could ever preach.
But Elder D. Todd Christofferson will devote the first less than 3 minutes of his conference talk to preaching a sermon about Lesotho. And I think we have that here. Let me see. Oh, that's right. I could have put this up here while you're playing it. I don't know if we can do both at the same time, but there's the quote. I typed it out from David A. Bednar. If you want to have it, there it is.
It was President Nelson's words on that card that got sent. Showing up shows more love and support than a postcard of words.
And when it says it was addressed to dear family and friends, that's the real personal touch.
And it had a picture of the women leaders on it. I should say that about the card. It had a picture of the general presidencies, the female leaders on the card. And they also purchased them scriptures because their scriptures had burnt up in the horrific accident. So they did replace their scriptures. And I will say the church, it was reported, was helping support, with food aid, whatever was needed. There was that. But as far as a person visiting, a statement from your prophet, I think this is the worst loss of life since Hans Mill. Don't you think? I mean, I can't think. Maybe the Mountain Meadows. Those were not LDS. Yeah. So I don't know.
The
I'm
Mormons
just,
did pretty good in Mountain Meadows. They came out of that okay.
oh no, my ancestor, totally. Yep. 2 wagons, whole bunch of cows. Oh yeah.
Too
He made
soon.
out like a bandit.
So here's what happens is that poor D. Todd Christofferson, he gets the lateral pass, and they say, hey, we went out, we talked about Michigan. We didn't say anything about Lesotho. We need you to talk about Lesotho. And Christofferson saying, I already got what I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about this. I want to hit the law of chastity really hard. And they say, no, you got to do this. You got to put this in there somewhere. He says, okay, fine. So he sticks it in the very first part of his talk. He opens out of the gates going into Lesotho. And then he talks about it for less than 3 minutes, and then makes an awkward segue out of Lesotho into what it is that he really wanted to talk about. And that's where this video clip ends. If you want to put this on like 1.25, Bill, everyone will thank you.
I don't think I'll be able to do that, but it will play here. So,
okay.
Last June, a terrible accident occurred in the country of Lesotho in southern Africa. A small bus carrying 20 young women of the Maputsoi branch of the church and 7 of their leaders was headed to the capital city, Maseru, for a gathering of young women from their district. As they traveled the 2-lane highway in the morning hours, a car coming in the opposite direction, attempting to pass another vehicle, came into the lane occupied by the bus. There was no space or time to avoid a head-on collision, and within seconds, the vehicles hit, rolled off the road, and burst into flames. In all, 15 people died in the accident, including 6 young women, 2 young women leaders, and the branch president and his wife. Survivors, family members, and friends have expressed a range of emotions, including moments of anger and depression, even guilt. Despite these feelings and unanswered questions, they have comforted one another and turned to God through sacred music, the scriptures, and prayer, where they have found solace. 17-year-old survivor Setsuwana Seribeli testified, Jesus Christ loves us and is with us, even though our hearts hurt. A young woman and a leader who were hospitalized for burn treatments studied the Book of Mormon together. One said, lately we've been reading in Moroni, and Moroni says exactly what I've been feeling. When he speaks, it's like he's saying, you have to learn these words because they are written for you to help you pass through this. At a joint funeral service for those who perished, Area 70 Elder Siabonga Mkizi counseled, we should all turn to the Lord at this time and ask him to comfort our hearts and to soothe the pain we feel. The young woman president from the neighboring Lerive branch, Mamfu Makura, urged, turn to the Lord and find strength to accept his will. Jesus Christ is the author and finisher of our faith. Don't look away, but look to him. Look to him.
Ding.
Her words echo the counsel of Alma to his son Helaman.
There we
See
go.
that
Now
you look to
I got
God.
that out of the way. Now I can go to my talk. Look to him. Boy, you couldn't tell that was happening, could you?
What a segue.
Yeah. So that's where he talked about it for less than 3 minutes, and he got into, I think, what it was that he really wanted to talk about. You know, that was the first time that I've actually heard a description of what happened. You may have already known that, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I knew obviously that it was multiple vehicles, but that was the most detailed description that I've ever heard. And I'm just going to leave it out there that that's what happened. And if there's any facts that we're missing, folks, we try and get the facts right here. We're not trying to intentionally make the church look bad. It just, the facts seem to do that for them. And if by any chance we've missed it and there was some apostle who went over there in the weeks after, or at any time up to the present, to visit and console or whatever, or GA 70, please let us know and we'll report that, okay? We'll need a source, of course, on it, but yeah, we want to be sure about this because I'm astonished at how bad the church is letting itself look.
And Elder Christofferson never returned to anything else about the African tragedy, right? The rest of the talk was morality, chastity, masturbation, wasn't it?
I think he had a little one-line link up at the end,
Oh,
but I
he
could
did.
be imagining it. I was deliriums by then.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you were. You're right. It does not fit that talk. It's just like it's tacked on and then segue, scriptures, Moroni, live right, chastity, right?
Yeah, that chastity
Doesn't
came out of
belong
left
here.
field. It was like, where did that come from? We're in the middle of your talk, and all of a sudden, zingo, law of chastity, guys. Don't touch anybody's private parts unless you're married to them.
Wow.
It seems like so, you know, if the three of us were the first presidency for the church and there was this tragic thing in Africa, I think we would have immediately, within an hour and a half of us chatting with each other, trying to sort of figure out and make sense of what happened and grieve over the loss of the saints in the church. We need to send somebody, right? Like that seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? Let's tell Patrick Kieran is one of the younger ones. Let's tell him to get on a plane and get his booty over there. And then Elder Bednar's response indicates that something happened before this incident in Washington or Michigan. It's almost like they sense like, oh, we dropped the ball there. People are telling us it's by sending someone that you let people know that you love and support and you care. So
they can't be that stupid, Bill.
They can't be that smart either.
Well, and here's what's interesting is I was following Michigan and I was reading posts from people and victims and families. I came across one that said, we have been told that 2 general authorities will come and visit us and they want to talk to us. So I reported, unlike Africa, they are actually sending 2 general authorities. I don't know what happened between that or if 2 general authorities, I don't think ever showed up and somebody decided, okay, 2 general authorities are not going to cut it. We've got to send in the big Bednar guns. But yeah, initially it was just going to be 2 general authorities that were going to visit.
Okay, thank you. So let's see what we have next here. Right. This is the name that D. Todd Christofferson said was the individual who presided at the funeral. That's Elder Siyabonga Makizi. And he is an Area 70. Okay. Once again, now my understanding is that's between a stake president and whatever it is between him and an apostle.
Yeah, it's not a 70-70. It's like a lesser kind of a 70. And I have to point out some of these pictures you can kind of see. I mean, those coffins lined up, 2 days of, memorial services, a funeral and a memorial, giant tents. It was in a stadium, thousands of people, dignitaries. Why would there be no representation from the head of a global church? I cannot understand it.
Why are you? I mean, even if you don't care, think about the opportunity you're missing.
Where was Aaron Sherinian, PR, telling them somebody has to go? That's what I mean. It's very
I think Aaron Sherinian has to go. I think they need to hire me.
Maybe he went and we didn't know. But no, that's what I mean by calculated. There's a reason that you don't do something that's so innately obvious that you should do it. There's a reason you don't. And I don't know what that reason is.
I think ineptitude would probably cover it.
And just,
I'm a conspiracy theorist.
I don't think Area 70s are paid by the church, and they are local. They're the next thing above a stake president who is below a full-time 70, and they're the boots on the ground, but they're not paid by the church, I don't believe. They live nearby. They're in the area. This was the best they had. Sending an apostle was outside of the purview of what they knew to do.
Or the area presidency. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but had the area presidency attended, they would have been the highest ranking priesthood holder and someone of them would have presided, as I think. I didn't really see anything that the area presidency even showed up.
One of the few things you can count on about Mormonism is that the highest guy is going to be announced to be presiding.
Right.
In every meeting.
Yeah, and the thing in Africa happens so close to Christmas, that might be the only card the area gets. So
sarcasm, eh?
A little bit.
Got it. Okay. Well, let me see. I think we got a few more slides that have to do with this. Here's the thing. We're 45 minutes into this. I was going to go over a couple of other talks. What I want to do is just go past my stuff. This has been its own story, and we went in depth. So I want to leave it at this. Go through mine are the blue, and come up with the next story. And let's take it from there. You don't have to show all my slides, but okay.
And we
There
can
you go, the
circle
green.
back.
It's
Yeah,
the
what
green.
you all don't know is that before the show, we were cutting things right and left because there was so much, right? And we realized we need to have time to discuss and clarify things. And so we'll be adding things as we go along. But this was my conference weekend. It was a conference-free zone. I was kind of so overwhelmed, as you guys probably noticed on the newscast last week, just by the Michigan and everything, and just, you know, staying up late and reporting and stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to watch conference. I'm going to watch RFM, right? So when I say that you took one for the team, you really did, because I was in a place where there was not very much cell service. So I just kind of hit and miss on my phone, and some of my friends texting, and of course your programs. So
This is where you were?
that is, I took those pictures on my phone. Can you believe it? It's Jackson Hole area.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
seriously, like, talk about just good for the soul. And I kept thinking, wow, I could be at home. I could be glued to the TV. I could be watching conference, or I could be doing this. I mean, it was incredible. I have to say, it was
And
amazing.
here I was slaving away in my underground bunker.
No, I was really worried about you. I would have sent you a DoorDash, but you don't tell anybody where you live.
That's
So
true, I don't.
anyway, to me, this was one of the bigger stories, probably the biggest story of all of conference. And of course, I have Oprah up there, who famously says, you get a. This is the opposite. You don't get a temple. You don't get a temple. And especially you do not get a temple. That's right. We are not going to have temple announcements at this session of conference on Sunday. And I have some theories about it even going forward. So let's listen to President Oaks. This was the final address where President Nelson always gleefully announced the temples, right? He had his lighted pen. He'd kicked Wendy out of bed, and he'd written down the places where Jesus wants his new house. And we were debating, will this happen? Won't it happen? So everybody was, riveted to what President Oaks would say. Let's find out.
My loving brothers and sisters, thank you for your prayers in my behalf. I have felt them. The doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints centers on the family. Essential to our doctrine on the family is the temple. The ordinances received there enable us to return as eternal families to the presence of our Heavenly Father.
Can you make this 1.5, Bill?
As of the April 2025 General Conference, President Russell M. Nelson had announced the construction of 200 new temples. He loved to announce new temples at the conclusion of each General Conference, and we all rejoiced with him. However, with the large number of temples now in the very earliest phases of planning and construction, it is appropriate that we slow down the announcement of new temples. Therefore, with the approval of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, we will not announce any new temples at this conference. We will now move forward in providing the ordinances of the temple to members of the church throughout the world, including when and where to announce the construction of new temples.
Wow, there is so much to unpack in that.
President Nelson died just in time. I'm starting to wonder about the circumstances of his demise.
Yep, it was a little suspicious that it was just a few days before those 15 to 18 new temples were going to be announced, I think. And we're going to talk about that if we can go back to the slides. So people were very surprised right away on Faithful social media and Post-Mormon social media. People started saying, what did he say? What does he mean? What's happening? Faithful social media kind of arrived very quickly at the idea that it is because there is no prophet right now. There is no president of the church. That is the person who receives the revelation from Jesus as to where his new house will be built. And so, of course, they cannot announce them. That was one of the things that kind of came up. So it was all over headlines. Church of Jesus Christ is slowing down. The recent surge of new temples, the church leaders opt to slow down. They're all calling it a slow down, right? Because it's been going at breakneck speed for 7 years. 200 new temples. No one is ever going to top that at all.
That's because President Nelson was the best prophet ever.
Well, he's the only one so far that had a lighted pen. That might have something to do with it, and his notepad. So some of the comments that I thought kind of represented how people were feeling. This person says, guaranteed, if Nelson was alive, he would have announced more today. And this is a
Yes,
question. We have
absolutely.
been making predictions about this. The timing of this pause with Nelson's passing makes it 100% clear that it was all about Nelson announcing as many temples as possible while he was alive, and one-upping Hinckley, who held the record before him and who repeatedly shot him and his ideas down in the public. So this is, I tend to agree with everything this person said. Another person said Oakes has the list of temples to be announced that Nelson wrote just last week, crumpled up in his pocket, or maybe he burned the evidence already. And this is a big question. Was there already a list of temples that were going to be announced? Or was there even a pre-recorded talk? I know they do these things a month or so in advance with that list of temples at the end of the talk, like he always does.
Can you go back to that slide? Because I want to talk to you
Sure.
about that. First off, I love the picture. I think that picture is of President Hinckley. At
Yep.
that time, he gave Elder
With his
Nelson that famous
cane.
caning.
Yeah.
And he
I
seems
know.
to be thoroughly enjoying it too.
I feel like the lighted pen is Nelson's, tit for tat with the cane. He was so beloved with his cane. Nelson has the pen. Everyone has to have a prop. I don't know
I
what
thought
Oakes
making
would.
Nelson pull his pants down was going too far, though.
I
Well,
feel like Oakes is going to have a gavel, right? That'll be appropriate. And he'll just kind of pound it whenever he says
No,
something.
can I just say that the way Oakes says it, I think it's crystal clear that there were more temples to be announced.
Yep.
What
Yeah.
does he need the
We're gonna
permission
go in-
of all the other apostles to not announce any temples if there's no temples to be announced?
Exactly.
By the
And
way,
we're
this is
gonna-
all Rebecca.
We're going to
Rebecca
read that
filled
quote
my
again.
ear with this afternoon on the phone. So let me
I
turn it
did.
back to you because this is an astonishing insight you've come up with.
I was ranting because, I share all my conspiracy theories with RFM and Bill, but no, if you dissect his words, of course I made this. Here is President Nelson with his list that he would have been presenting. I Googled what are the worst places in the world or the hardest to get there. Antarctica, Death Valley. There's a place called Point Nemo that is the hardest to get to in the entire world. So of course that's just a joke. And then I have the smiling Jesus that says, Russell, dude, 200 temples is excessive. I was totally kidding. You thought I was serious? Dude, honestly, 200 temples, if you really think about what that means. So here's what RFM and Bill are talking about. President Oakes said, with the approval of the quorum of the 12 apostles, we will not be announcing any additional temples at this conference. So, other people have figured this out. Someone else says, why would there need to be approval to not announce new temples? The only reason I can think of, Nelson had a list of new temples ready to announce when he spoke on Sunday. And after he passed, the 12 decided to shelve that list. Another picture here of the quorum of the 12 saying, scrap the list, scrap it. All those in favor of scrapping it, please manifest. And
Now, all of that makes absolute sense. It's almost unanswerable. Obviously, that's what happened. It would be remarkable if that's not what happened. But then you took it a step further and said, well, what does that mean then?
Yeah, and Bill had a point. We talked earlier. Why don't you bring that up, Bill? There is a possible reason for asking for approval, but I just feel like, he went to them and said, look, Nelson has this list. I think we all need to agree that we're not going to read it. We're just going to kind of have a moratorium. But Bill, you had another thought, more procedural than I was aware of.
Yeah, there's two things going on here. So first is, I think you're right. By the language of how this was worded, there's a list. And we need to make a call here that we're not going to proceed forward with the list. And I need all of you to join with me in, are you okay with the decision to scrap the list and to move forward without announcing any new temples? And that happened. And you guys are pointing to that. So what I'm about to say does not scratch that at all. Some folks might ask, why does he need the approval of the rest of the apostles? He's the new leader of the church. Well, no, not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So because he falls back into the quorum of the 12, now there's a quorum of 14 apostles because the new one hasn't been called and the two from the first presidency have gone back in. That quorum has to act in a unified manner. So Oakes does have to have the apostles' approval for any change, anything that gets done. He's not the prophet of the church at that moment. But still, Asking for the approval means there were temples to be announced, and you need everyone to be on board to scrap the list. You don't need everyone on board to announce what was never going to be announced anyway.
Right. Or at least put the list in abeyance. And I would expect the list occurred at a minimum at the end of his talk, which President Nelson probably already had written. It was already either he wrote it or someone else did, and it's printed out, and it may have even been already recorded, because there were some questions as to whether they would play his last recorded message in General Conference, if indeed it had been recorded earlier. But they didn't.
But they didn't. And that's exactly right. I'm positive that there was a list. And it's not just a list. In following all of the temple building that I do and talking to all the people who ask the question of church lawyers and other officials, why does the temple have to be here? Or why does it have to look like this? All the towns that I work with want to know that. And the answer they're given every time is, Jesus wants this specific temple in this specific place and has given that information to our prophet. This is not just a list of temples that President Nelson came up with. This is God, Jesus, demanding his house to be built here. So the idea that President Oaks and the other apostles could crumple that list from Jesus, right? From Jesus to Nelson, that really says something, don't you think?
What do you think it says?
Maybe they don't really believe in prophetic ability. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, if Jesus really gave this list of temples through his mouthpiece, Prophet and President Nelson, then who are these people to brush it aside and not announce it in General Conference?
It seems like you would want to honor the man as prophet who received revelation to name the next 11 temples, whatever it was going to be. And what they've essentially said is, one, as you point out, one is, we actually don't run by revelation. We tell you guys this works by revelation, but that Nelson guy was just out of control on temple building. And if you're a believer out there and you go, no, we have a prophet, this works by revelation, then you have to wrestle with, why did these 14 men, the moment Nelson died, they go, we're done with this. I don't care if God himself told Nelson where those 11 temples are going. This was out of control. We're done.
This is what they did with that list.
ooh, there it is. Yep. Can you imagine? I wish I had that list. I think it was going to be 18. I think that would have taken it up to a cool 400. Can you imagine those towns going, whew? I mean, in fact,
Rebecca,
I
think about
actually,
it.
what?
Rebecca, this is such a great insight that you've come up with, but think about it. It was more important to President Oaks to put the brakes
Mhm.
on the temple building than it was to reconstitute the first presidency in time for conference.
Yep. And we're going to talk about why. But I will say that the individuals that I work with in temple building, Cody, Heber, Lone Mountain, Fairview, almost every single one reached out with this news and said, what was it all for then? Why my town? Why? It really does ask that question. What was it all for? And as we get into it, we'll kind of understand here. So just 2 weeks ago, there was a big celebratory article, a look at the 200 temples announced by President Nelson and each one's current status, right? The news is portraying this as a positive thing. A lot of us understand how it can be very problematic. And I think President Oaks understands this all too well. So here are the stats, the most recent stats of the 200 temples that he announced, right? Getting up there every conference, hearing the cheers. Yay, right? 28 are dedicated. 28 of the 200. 4 scheduled for dedication, 56 under construction. Now that probably includes Heber, where they just barely dug into the ground and then an injunction stopped them. So construction doesn't mean close. It means, they own the plot and they're starting to do something on it. 2 are scheduled for a groundbreaking. 29 have site location identified and renderings published. That doesn't mean it's a done deal. That means it could be in court for years. Site, identified. We all know what can happen from there. And then 17 temples with only locations identified. That doesn't mean that you've got that okay with the city. We all know these processes. They take so long. And 64 announced temples are still, basically, he just threw the name out there. So if that right there doesn't give you an idea of what President Oaks was probably thinking, like, crap, this is a huge problem. And I'll show you why it's an even bigger problem. So President Nelson, in an article, explained why do we have to build all these temples? Why are we building temples at such an unprecedented pace? Why? Because the Lord has instructed us to do so. This kind of follows up on what I said so before. The Lord is telling President Nelson he doesn't want to announce all those temples. It's God talking to him. And yet that list, as we just saw the visual with RFM, was crumpled up and thrown away.
No questions asked. So that's what passes for revelation in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 2025. Today's revelation, tomorrow's garbage.
Wow. We'll put that on a t-shirt.
God is unchanging. So Nelson is God's prophet. He's from God's lips to Nelson's ear. And God is telling Nelson, build temples, build temples, build temples. And then this last go round, there's more temples to build. And suddenly Nelson dies. And God goes, yeah, that guy's out of the picture now. I think I'd like to do things. I was not the one who wanted to rush with things. It was that guy. So now that you guys are in charge again, can you guys, for heaven's sake, knock off all this temple building? That's such a strange thing if you believe the church is true.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how God wants to do exactly what you want to do. And it also makes you wonder what else will be dialed back that Nelson put into place. So as I said before, this is what the Lord wants, as Nelson said in that article, has been the battle cry for temple building everywhere, even to the point where in, was it Fairview? Or Lone Mountain, Fairview, I think. One of the church lawyers said that God lives on the second floor. It's so specific. It is his house. He wants his house in a special place. He wants a steeple. This is a picture from one of the meetings about the steeple, right? Where this woman was saying, I was married in the Boston Temple and it didn't have a steeple. Was I married? Sure. But was it diminished? Yes. And then she kind of nudged her husband and had him hold up the thing, her marriage, her married life has been ruined because of no steeple. So I'm saying this is a big deal. They have used this against unsuspecting people everywhere to say, this is our faith. These are our beliefs. This is what God says to us. And they've used it like a sword. And now it's been thrown in the trash. This is why I have a problem with this. And I think it's a really big deal.
I'm sure it's because there was no steeple that her married life is in a shambles.
We don't know.
I'm sure she has nothing to do with that.
We don't know. We have no idea what's going on. But we did sort of look at social media, what different people were saying. Did he literally just say they will no longer announce temples in public? Okay, so we're going to get into the statement because there's lots of different ways to read it. Somebody else says, I'm guessing they want to try to avoid all of the local backlash and opposition. It's likely new temple announcements won't happen until everything is permitted and approved. The Heber Temple groundbreaking was done 3 years ago, right? And there's an injunction right now. So
this was one of the problems that you'd mentioned to me, Rebecca, is just the fact that they're announcing them. Because as soon as they announce them, people are starting to get it wise because of your efforts, Rebecca Biblioteca, and all the work you've done exposing how the church takes advantage of neighborhoods in order to build temples there and circumvent the rules or bend them or do all this deception. Why would you announce them in advance to give that much more warning to the community where you're planning on building one of these behemoths, excuse me?
Yeah,
why
no,
would
and
you
this
do
is
that
this is
unless
why I
you're
think
like Nelson
Yep.
up here wanting all the adulation and you've got Oaks going, what are you doing?
Yes.
Stop that.
Yeah, this is what I think. President Oaks is a lot more pragmatic. I think that he gets it. And I think that there's been a lot of damage done with how many temples have been announced. And like you said, avoiding the backlash, right? I'll give you an example. This is Flagstaff, okay? Flagstaff was announced last April. We're going to build a temple in Flagstaff. Well, that is a dark sky extraordinaire area. They have STEM programs. They have national observatories. They are dark skies and very, scientific backing, scientific reasoning. Hours after this was announced on Reddit, there's lawsuits. We're going to have to sue. There's a temple coming. Over here it says, get a hold of Rebecca Biblioteca, right? Hours later, here is the public outcry. Here is the petition. And honestly, the announcement, none of this will probably happen for 5 years. But as soon as it's announced over the pulpit, people get wind of it and they're on guard based on, I would say, all of our efforts just to have people be more aware of what's going on in their town and pay attention to their town council.
Yes.
Why would you want to announce it out loud and have this happen?
But
This
it's
is
your
why
effort, though. You got an award for
Right.
always talking about the temple.
I
You
did
know,
get an
from
award.
Porch Time Mormons, you
I
got a
did.
very special award from them
I did.
because of your insistence on covering more the temple story like you have.
You
And I wanted
will
to ask you, how
never let
how
that
did it make
go.
you feel when you saw that message saying, somebody get a hold of Rebecca Biblioteca?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how I felt. And then somebody else mentioned Mormonish because that was always our goal, talking about temples. And honestly, we fell into it with people contacting us just to find out, what are Mormons? What is happening? We are at a loss, which they are, right? They're being told their God, the Mormon God, insists on a temple here. People are trying to be respectful. So our goal was always, if a temple is announced in your town, that you can find some resources online and decide if it works for your town in your area. That's great. And a lot of temples do. I would say the majority of temples do. But if it doesn't, and there are some concerns, find some resources, know what to do, be savvy, be aware, attend your city councils. So the fact that Flagstaff knew right away to maybe,
Yes.
watch a Mormonish episode or
Mhm.
Nemo, any of that, I'd say my work here is done. And maybe I think if you listen to what, and we'll read the statement again in just a minute as I finish out here, where it said, temples will be announced. It doesn't sound like they will ever be announced in conference again to me. He said announced at this conference. Could that mean this venue, this avenue? I mean, imagine if a temple is just kind of announced locally to stake leaders, neighbors get an announcement on their door to come to a meeting. That's all anybody knows about it, right? There's not this big bullhorn.
Mhm.
Beware, this is coming, or don't beware. That's the thing. It works for some towns. Another thing is avoiding embarrassment, right?
Yes.
Russia, everyone went crazy. Shanghai, oh my God, until the government's like, yeah, I don't think so. Even Dubai, right? These fantastic destinations and nothing happens. And
Mm-mm.
people notice on the faithful side. They really do. They're like, whatever happened to that, So avoiding embarrassment of lawsuits, injunctions, temples not being built. There really is no good that can come out of announcing it publicly except for a little bit of rah-rah. But there have been so
Right.
many temples announced. I think the rah-rah factor is
Mhm.
over.
Yeah. The
So I think
rah-rah is wah-wah. Hey,
rah-rah is
Rebecca,
wah, wah,
before you
wah,
go on to the
wah.
next thing, I just want to say on behalf of me, on behalf of Bill, on behalf of this entire audience, we owe you a debt of gratitude
Oh,
because you are the one who's done this. It's not all of us. You always try and say, yeah, all of us have worked on it. No, we haven't. It's all been you. You are the cause. You are the cause. And I just want to give you an ovation for that. And I hope everybody will join me
oh,
at
that
home
is so
or wherever
kind.
you're watching the show from.
That is
Yes,
so
Bill.
nice.
Bill. There we go.
But I
Bill
will say,
is
do you know what it is?
that's
Whoa,
okay. Bill was clapping for Minnie there.
that sounded terrifying.
I was wondering why Bill wasn't clapping. It's because he's trying to
He
find the
was
knob,
playing that. You know
the
what I
right
will say
knob.
though? It's the people. It really is just the people getting to know these residents. They're our friends, right? Getting to see what's happening and just helping them maybe, make things a little better. That's what it's really about. So I'm going to read this one more time at the end here. However, with the large number of temples now in the very earliest phases of planning, we talked about that, it is appropriate that we slow down the announcement of new temples. Therefore, with the approval of the Quorum of the 12, and as we talked about, we believe that's because there was a list that they crumpled up and are not going to announce. We will not announce any new temples at this conference. Okay. People have been trying to dissect this at this conference, at general conference ever again. We talked about some of the reasons that may not be the case. We will now this is the part I want to talk about. We will now move forward in providing the ordinances of the temple to members of the church throughout the world. Okay. He didn't say we're building a temple. He said we will provide the ordinance of the temple to members of the church throughout the world, including when and where to announce the construction of new temples. Now that is really interesting wording. They don't say things by accident. And based on some other things that I've heard, I have several different sources. I have some theories about this. I'm just going to very quickly go over. One thing I think is that temple locations are now going to be very secret, like we talked about. Now, I recently had a temple connection reach out to me and say there's a new temple going in Texas, and they are hell-bent on keeping this absolutely secret. Here's the address, right? I love that kind of stuff, right? But the issue with that is not only are they keeping it secret, if there are members of the church involved in city government, they are telling those members, don't let anyone know that you are connected to the church, right? So this is the inside man that works so well in Cody, Wyoming. Could it be that they'll choose locations for temples where there is an inside man? That works very well, right?
And
And
by
they
that,
want
you mean a Mormon on the city council or
Yep.
in the planning department or something?
Exactly. Or in Bakersfield, the city manager has just been made the stake president about a year ago, things like that. So I guess he gives the announcements about the temple as the stake president and the city manager. Anyway, laying low, right? Kind of keeping it just on the down low like that. Another prediction that I have that seems to kind of be backed up by this statement is more of a meeting house level temple, meaning bare bones, absolutely simple, not opulent, looks just like a meeting house, especially in Africa. We're going to talk about Africa again, where opulence is not a good look. And I have heard these rumblings that something happened in Africa, whatever that would be. Could it be members saying, why are you asking me for tithing when you have this castle, this opulent building here with a fence around it? Could it be governments looking at the building? Whatever happened, and I don't know. I just know that something did. Maybe somebody out there knows.
This all sounds very, I don't know, Area 51-ish.
It does sound Area 51-ish. That's right.
How do
Area
you know
Rep
something
51.
happened if you don't know what it was?
How can I know, right? I can only know what I know, but I'm just saying whatever it was has resulted in this concept of a much lower profile temple, okay? And I would even take it to the next extreme here. I can't read through the
Do you have
chat.
are there some diagrams or designs for a lower kind of temple that you're talking about?
Yeah, but I'm going to keep.
But you don't
things-
have those?
Oh, well, I'm not saying I don't have them. I'm just keeping them.
You're
But
not
it's
gonna
an
show
idea.
those?
It's a concept. And I'm saying that it may be tried out in the United States with a temple before it is tried out other places, but low profile, there are lots of benefits to that. Other ways to receive temple ordinances and blessings outside of a traditional temple. I'm not the only one that thinks this based on that statement. Could it be a scenario where, a temple room, in a chapel, in a stake center? It reminds me of what I reported on during the summer about Russia, right? There's not a temple there, or is there? Because I talked to somebody who's connected to someone who's a liaison in that area saying saints are receiving temple ordinances. I'm just saying there's a lot out there. And I think things about temples and the way they're done, the way they're built, the way people worship in the temple, I think a lot of things are going to change, and I'll just leave it at that. But I think
And you
those
may be
statements
right, because
are loaded.
we gotta increase that 300 billion we've got in the bank. By the way,
That's exactly right.
with all due deference to your unnamed sources, do you think it's possible that you might be reading a little too much into what it was that President Oak said?
No, I don't think so, because if you go back, they don't say things by accident. We will move forward in providing the ordinances of the temple to members of the church throughout the world.
Most
He
people
didn't.
would think that means we're going to follow through and build the rest of the 100+ temples that are already
Oh, of
announced.
course, but he didn't say that, did he? He didn't say that at all, right? So and remember, we reported on a couple months ago, there will be a temple within an hour's drive of every single saint. They're not saying that in either. So I don't know. We'll see. What I will say is I think things are changing. I think President Oaks recognized that President Nelson loved to announce temples, whether it was just for the rah-rah factor or to stick it to Hinckley, and that day is done. They're going to change things up. They're going to be way more on the down low, with the buildings themselves, with the way they're announced, to just put all this bad PR away, right? Has there ever been more bad PR than temple PR? It's everywhere, right?
It is, Rebecca, and
So,
because of you, actually.
oh, God, you keep throwing me under the bus. Anyway,
No,
those
no,
are
I'm
my thoughts
exalting
about
you
the
on
whole
high.
temple thing.
I'm
Yep.
exalting you on high. By the way, is there any way to go back through all the last 8 years of general conferences when President Nelson is giving the final talk and reading off his list of temples? And can we get a camera on Elder Oaks and see what he's doing
That's
while
an
that list is being read?
That's an interesting idea. And notice that in the last couple years, it used to be, and then they said, please refrain from making a sound, right? So I think even Nelson, or maybe that was Oaks, saying, we've got, this is turning into a circus. I think there's been a lot behind the scenes about this not being appropriate. And here it is. He's not even the prophet yet. First act, President Nelson is laying in state right now, and they've already done away with his favorite thing to do, the biggest thing that he does. That to me says something. And who knows what's going to happen next.
And they got rid of the revealed list of names for the next 18 or so temples that we'll never know about.
We'll never know.
By the way, this is the other point I want to make about this, okay? Because if this is correct, and except for your, those kind of paranoid delusional things you have over there on the
thank you very much.
Fringe, this part I think is solid, okay? That they had a list, they pocketed the list, they got approval. Okay, we're not going to announce anymore. Okay. If that's correct, and I think it is, why don't you just tell us that's what happened?
No, it's
why
not a
do
good
you
look.
have to engage? And I'm so sorry. It was a rhetorical question, but would you like to try and answer it?
No, I just said it's not a good look. You have to protect the organization at all costs.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell us what you did? Why do you always keep us in the dark? Why do you use words and twist them to deceive us and make us think you're doing something that you're not doing? Why do you do that to us? That's my question.
We'll never know.
Why don't you just come out and say, he had a list of temples. We've got so many going on, and we got other things to do. We're not going to announce them at this time. We're going to put them, because we got to build the ones that are announced. Everybody would understand that. We got to build the ones that are announced. And once we got these built, then we'll come back to this list and we'll announce it and we'll go on from there. Everybody would get that. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. But that's not where they go to. They don't go to being honest with us. They go to being deceptive.
Mic drop. All right. I think that's the end of temples. I think Bill has a couple stories that he's going to cover. And then I think I have one more conference one.
And I'll just say too, my 3 stories are small. I'm just going to just mention briefly what they are. I won't read the whole text there next to it. This story came out of the U.S. News. A well-defined leadership hierarchy makes for no surprises in next president of the Mormon Church. I just want to note what this article is saying. Mormonism has an established pattern for how it chooses the next leader and who's in charge and who runs business when the last guy passed away. And I just want to note that when I joined the church in 1996, RFM, I assume the same as when you joined in 78, that we were taught this idea that Joseph Smith was a prophet chosen by God. And what this article is pointing out is one side of the coin, which is it is so beneficial to an organization to have a well-defined leadership hierarchy and to have a well-defined process for the next leader when the last one passed away. But I also want to note the contradiction that in Mormonism, God has never, outside of Joseph Smith, once it gets past him and Brigham Young kicks everybody out of town and says, I don't care who has equal authority to me and the 12, I'm going to run this thing come hell or high water. From that point forward, God no longer has the ability to choose the next leader. It is always whoever has the most seniority. So the chance that God I was taught in Mormonism through the discussions and preparing for baptism that there was this kid in 1820. It wasn't the ministers of the day. It was this farm boy from the backwoods of New York. And God handpicked him and selected him and said, you're going to be my prophet. And in today's LDS Church, that process, it just works like a corporation.
And it's usually designed to give us the very, very oldest possible candidate as well.
Yes. And by the way, I didn't put the graph in here, but one of the articles, and I think it was this one of the articles showed the ages. No, it was a different one. It was Deseret News or Salt Lake Tribune, but they showed the ages of the leaders. And because you always choose the person with the most seniority, yes, it's not an exact science. It does bounce around, but it ends up just getting older and older and older and older. And so now you get to the point where everybody's 80 years old or higher. You don't have the 40-year-old guy anymore. And that 40-year-old guy could never be in charge until he's 97 and a half. And so this system has been created to have consistency, to not have any surprises, to make sure that we can cover our bases and nothing catches us off guard. But it has completely eliminated God from the process.
Yes, very well put. This system has been built as a response to a lack of revelation.
Yeah. And so
This is why you need systems like this.
Can I just say, I attended a lecture from Matt Harris about the gerontocracy, and he brought up the point that Hugh B. Brown back in the 70s had said, look, we got to do something about this. We got to cap everybody at 70. Let's just cap them, and then everybody's emeritus. And the apostles said, what a great idea. I mean, for everyone else, not for us, right? And so there is no way to cap that. I've always thought it was interesting that if it truly is God choosing by who lives, shouldn't they shun all medical care? Shouldn't it really be in God's hands, right? Absolutely no medical care. It's just who God wants and who he doesn't. Like, what did Howard W. Henner do, right? Everybody asked that. So yeah, it's a very flawed system. You don't have anybody young and dynamic in leadership, and you're, there's power vacuums. There are people that are infirm. I mean, I learned from Matt Harris that when David O. McKay was very infirm and pretty much out of his mind, his secretary was pretty much running the church. People knew they had to go through her to get what they wanted, to the point where they were giving her a fur coat to get their cousin on the list of who might be the next apostle. I mean, yeah, Matt Harris has the receipts.
Is it Middle Miss?
Yes. Yes, it was. I'm hoping there's going to be a book about her, because while I love to see a woman in leadership, she didn't do it exactly the way that you would hope somebody would. But yes, everybody knew that they had to go through her, and she was his handler, and he would not make any decision without her for a number of years.
The last thing I'll say about it, in the current system, God could never handpick anyone again. You'd have to believe, and again, the way we would frame it, the way an apologist would come in and go, God determines who dies and when they die, and how Elder Oaks ends up making it all the way to the top, and Nelson passes away, and now he's the oldest guy because that's who Heavenly Father wanted. If think about all the little steps you would need to make that work, that in order to get Nelson, he's got to make this guy die here and that guy die. It's absurd. This is just a business that does not want to be caught off guard. It has a structured plan. These guys don't have to pray about who the next leader is. It's already been selected every single time since Brigham Young how this gets done.
Well, God is omnipotent, Bill. He has all power. I think he's perfectly capable of arranging the whacking of all the apostles he doesn't want to lead his church.
Yeah, but if you have God doing that, that is such a silly thought. So you can believe that if you want to. I think it's still quite absurd.
Look how convenient it was when Elder Ballard passed away. There couldn't have been anything more convenient right there at that moment.
It almost makes you believe in poisoning, doesn't it?
I don't know.
All right. Well, it's not like anybody's going to quibble about natural causes.
Talking about poison.
That's right. The other big talk, and I'll move through this quickly, was Elder Rasband talking about the family, a proclamation to the world. It was the 30th birthday. We touched on this last newscast, and we wondered what they would do, what they would say. Would they dare canonize it? I think most of us thought that would not happen, and it did not happen. But in a way, it was kind of solidified, if I can say that. So Ronald A. Rasband, the Family Proclamation, Words from God, right? That's the title right there. And, I think for the sake of time, I don't need to get into his entire talk. He basically shored up the nuclear family, heterosexual marriage, husband, wife, everything else is incomplete. It is, not the way God has ordained it. And I really don't want to talk about what was in his talk or is in the Family Proclamation. I want to talk about why you don't have to give it the weight and importance and let them use it like a sword that a lot of people think that you do, because you don't. I will show you that. What does the LDS Church think a family is? When I Googled LDS family, these are all pictures from the church website. It is a mother, father, and children, some extended family, no single even parents, and certainly no same-sex parents. It is a very specific kind of a family, a nuclear family from the 1950s. And I think everything we heard from Rasband and Oakes, because he also talked about the proclamation and he talked about have children right now, we've got to do it. And it's all just back to this 1950s nuclear family. So last time we talked about an article that had appeared in the church news about how the proclamation came to be. And we talked about how that article suddenly disappeared within 24 hours of it having shown up in the church news. And we all looked for it. I said, sorry, it's not there anymore. It was written by an intern, somebody who had worked for the Daily Universe at BYU and was now interning there for the church news. The article just disappeared. And we're not going to read through it, but it was a lengthy article called The Events That Led to the Creation of the Family, a Proclamation to the World. And it went through everything. It went through the steps that they took, the meetings that they had. They wrestled with it. They eventually talked to the women about it a few days before they were going to announce it. Here's this whole article. Well, my good friend, Generally Unquotable, if you have not discovered her channel, she is fantastic. And we collaborate on temple stuff. And today she texted me, or yesterday, and she said, when I was listening to Elder Rasband's talk, I noticed that almost word for word, paragraph for paragraph, he seemed to be quoting that missing talk that I just went through. She said, it sounded so familiar. I knew I'd heard it before. I knew I'd heard you talk about it on the newscast. I knew I'd read those screenshots. And so she actually put out her episode this morning, if you want to go check that out. And she goes through it. A lot of his talk is that missing article.
So what happened? Did they accidentally put his talk up?
I can't understand. Again, I am just a conspiracy theorist. Did an intern write his talk? Did his talk somehow get put up as an article? I have no idea. But if
or is he dying for a talk because he can't come up with an idea? He sees the article. He says, I like it. I'm going to use this for my talk. Yank it.
Take that down. Yeah, take that down. I'm going to use this. But yeah, if you go through it, watch her little clip this morning. It was on her October 6th. She puts out something every day with current news, kind of short tidbit. She discovered this, that a lot of his talk is based on this article written by a kid. So I don't know what to think about that, but that's kind of my first red flag with an apostle telling us how important the proclamation is, how it came to be, and why we're supposed to, pay attention to it in our own lives, to the point where often family members are hurt. I mean, if you went on social media, faithful and post-Mormon, there were people concerned about their LGBTQ friends, family members. Everybody was talking about practicing self-care. There's a lot of hard things to hear in this talk, and it could have been copied from somebody who was an intern.
Can I say, just to make it clear, that the talk and the article give the fake history of how the proclamation on the family came to be. This is the whitewashed Mormon version of how it came to be. It has nothing about the truth.
Nope.
The political machinations behind the scenes that were going on, and the fact that it was ripping off the moral majority and Jerry Falwell with their family manifesto.
Yep. And that's what I'm going to show next. So I wanted to know, we all said, are they going to canonize this? They didn't canonize it, but I wanted to keep track. And this is from the transcript of his talk, the words that he used to describe what is this proclamation? What is it, right? It says the proclamation has a divine origin. So we must treat it with the reverence deserving of words from God. So it's divine in origin. It is words from God. Okay.
Yes.
They prayerfully turn to the Lord, talking about the apostles, for what they should say and how they should say it. So the Lord is giving them instructions on what belongs in the family proclamation. A proclamation to the world by divine design. Okay. It has a divine design. The proclamation with its revelatory words. So words that are revelatory, they stop short of saying it's a revelation, but they said the words in it are revelatory.
Isn't it clear that he came out there with the goal or the assignment of saying everything he could about this document?
Yeah,
going
just
all
short.
the way up to the cliff of saying you can't say it's scripture,
right?
And you can't say it's revelation,
right? But
everything
everything else,
that, knock yourself out.
And the kitchen sink. Yeah, that's why I had to grab these. And these are right out of the transcript. And I might have even missed a few. There were quite a number of them. It also said it felt very positive that we had members of the Quorum of the 12 that were receiving revelation. Okay. So
Well,
it
there's
itself is
revelation.
not a revelation, but the words in it, the things that the quorum working together to put in it were received by revelation. Okay.
I think it pretty fine.
Yeah, I think so too. He then read the proclamation in its entirety. And I think he's talking about President Nelson and President Oaks were the main kind of driving forces as he's telling it in the proclamation. As the Lord has said, whether by mine own voice or by the voice of my servants, it is the same.
Yes.
That's alluding that this is the Lord's voice in
Yes.
the proclamation, right?
Yes.
He also said the Lord and his covenant path, the teachings of the proclamation were revealed by our Lord Jesus Christ to his apostles then and now. So
You can
everything,
tell this is the whole point of the talk, can't you?
I think so. Yeah, these were peppered every single time they brought it up. And then the final thing that he said that people are kind of laying bets on, are they going to take this out of the printed version of the talk? The proclamation on the family is, as President Hinckley stated, doctrine. Okay. So doctrine, revelatory words, divine design. I mean, it sounds like it's a document from God. Would you guys read it any other way?
I think he got this assignment from Elder Oaks. I'm just guessing. By the way, this guy, Elder Rasband, he's the one who should have been talking about Lesotho.
He actually should have, because he's the only one that actually on his personal page put out, some kind of a condolence. Anyway, so I was very curious, and I was glad I put that all together, just so that everybody can know what the church is claiming this document is, right? All of these amazing words that makes it sound like it was crafted on high. Well, I will tell you, if somebody received a revelation for this document, it wasn't the apostles or prophet of the Mormon church. It was Jerry Falwell.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
didn't get it right. Falwell, not Faldwell. He was the leader of the moral majority, right? You probably remember this, don't you, RFM? Bill might be too young.
1980s, absolutely.
Yep, that's right. So Jerry Falwell, the Christian right, the moral majority, they wanted to weigh in on court cases, right? Just like the LDS Church. They were seeing the family was being eroded, degraded. Same-sex marriage was on the table, and they needed to put something together, something out that could state their views, their goals, the things that the revelations they had received, I guess, from God about what a family should be. And so we are talking about 1988. Does that even the font look familiar? The Family Manifesto. This was put out. I know, this is crazy. So we're not going to go into the whole thing, but like I said, I want people to be able to be armed with this knowledge. If family members or friends try to use the family proclamation as a sword, you can simply show them this picture and say, it's kind of interesting about that proclamation, right? 7 years prior. And you can freeze this and you can go over point by point. It is so similar. In some cases, word for word, everything that the Family Manifesto says, marriage, man and woman, nuclear family. We call upon governments and peoples to protect this by divine design. This is the family is the unit of society. I mean, you can just go through it. These are only a few things. And like I said, you can freeze on here and you can go through it. If there was a revelation, if this was from God with all of these words that we read before, Jerry Falwell got it first. Right. And I even had somebody say, because I put an episode out about this in the comments, well, you know what? Sometimes God gives other religions light and truth, and then we use it. Okay, that is not how this was portrayed, not with the wrestling and the revelatory words and the praying and the hoping and the receiving of the divine. No, they simply took this and they said, we're going to put one of these up ourselves. And they did use it, the Family Proclamation, going forward after 1995 when it was revealed to the public at the General Women's Meeting. And we talked about this already, how the women had no input, did not know. They used it in a number of legal proceedings. Another thing.
So the timing is this, right? 1988 is the Family Manifesto.
Yes.
And then 1995 is the LDS Proclamation on the family.
Correct. That's it. So good 7 years that God, put those words in the Christian right moral majority's court. before the LDS Church felt that they needed to wrestle with this and put something out. So that I just want everyone to be aware of that. You can dig into that and look at that as much as you can. But I just think this picture here, right there, is worth 1,000 words, right? I've been tempted to like publish the Family Manifesto and say, I just love to reread the Proclamation and see if anyone will notice the difference. I don't know. They might. Another thing that I thought was very interesting, and I kind of made this post about it. Why did Elder Rasband change the wording of the Family Proclamation in his general conference talk? I feel like this whole episode of the newscast is about words and wiggle words. The actual proclamation says that a father is to preside over his family. If this is the doctrine, why not state it? So let's talk about what he actually did say. He said, Elder Rasband, we read in the proclamation, fathers are to preside in love and righteousness, and mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children. Fathers are to preside in love and righteousness. What does it say? Can you read that, RFM? What does it say in the actual proclamation?
It says, by divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness.
Love and righteousness, right.
He left it out.
What would you say is the difference? And why would you say he left out the word over? To me, and I had my best friend from high school, English major, editor extraordinaire, text me about this, and she said, there is a world of difference between those two meanings, presiding in love and righteousness and presiding over their family in love and righteousness. What do either of you think about that? I think that's a huge tell. They left it out for a reason.
Doesn't it seem like the strangest thing that he just spent an immense amount of time telling you how much this was a revelatory process, how much the Family Proclamation is doctrine, how much God was involved in the process, only to take God's words and adapt them so as not to be as offensive as God was.
Right. That's it.
Really good point. You know, this comes in the part of his talk where he's emphasizing how equal men and women are in the Mormon church. Is there anybody else out there that's still believing that? Are you ever not going to fall for that? But he's trying to make that point. They're equal, and he's quoting the equal stuff that's in there, right? And it's in this context, by the way, that he omits the phrase preside over their families. You see, the actual sentence is, by divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness. He took out over their families, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says, by divine design, fathers are to preside in love and righteousness. So we get over the family. He took it out because it conflicts with the message he's trying to give. This is what this is what apostles in the church are reduced to, is changing the wording of what they claim is divine revelation so it doesn't conflict with the message they're telling the members of the church in general conference.
Yep, that's it. And it's a very hot button, right? It's a equality, separate but equal. The woman nurtures, if they had their way, every woman would be a trad wife. And it's very difficult to read that. That is one of the problems that people have with this document, is the relegation of women and girls to a certain role. And
one other thing, Rebecca, is that when this is printed, it will probably have ellipses there. If it doesn't, God help him. But
yeah, I'm not sure what they'll do.
But when we're listening to it, we cannot hear the ellipses.
And he didn't go like this. He didn't do air quotes. So they very quickly,
or say ...
Yeah. ... On the faithful side of things, put out, the next thing he said, which was, preside does not mean dominate, and nurture does not mean a secondary role. And this is where my editor friend texted me. She goes, preside, absolutely. Preside over means dominate. That's exactly what it means. To preside over something means to exercise authority or control over it, to act as a leader, a chief officer of a group, a meeting. Of course, they're talking in a corporate structure, but
that's why they call it the president. Whether it's the president of the United States or the president of the church, that's the guy at the top or the lady at the top. Yep. But it means that you're the one who has the authority.
Yep. The final say. And that's important.
In the temple, I know it's been removed, but it was there for a long time. Mm-hmm. To the women promise to hearken unto their husband as he hearkened unto the Lord. I'm pretty sure that means that the guy's in charge and it's the woman's job to listen.
Yeah. You could only access Christ, the blessings through a man. And again, I just ask any parents of little girls, do you really want to raise your little girl with this idea that there eventually will be, someone else that has a say over you and, your gut feelings, your intuition? He tried to make it better by telling this story about his lovely wife. She seems like a lovely person. He says, let me share a personal story. My wife and I learned to work better and to share it being equal partners after one day when I decided to make an important decision without consulting her, right? I don't know what that is, but it sounds like it was a big decision. And if you adhere to the
I think he bought
proclamation,
a little red sports car.
you can do that. That's the thing. If you're presiding over, you can make any decision unilaterally. You do not have to check with anybody else. My actions surprised her. Did it? If you've read the proclamation, it took her off guard and it put her in a very difficult situation. So that says to me that she would have been completely opposed had she been consulted. Had they
It's a very
worked it out
difficult
together.
situation. I read as she was mad as hell.
Exactly. He was probably on the couch, right? So afterwards, whatever, after he got his way, after he made his decision, after he moved them to Missouri, to Adirondack, whatever it was that he did, right? Afterwards, she put her hands on my shoulders, maybe more like this, right? And firmly said, Ron, please never do that to me again. And then he goes on to talk about how they worked together after that. But my co-host Landon pointed out the fact that she knew she had to beg that means that she knew he could do that. He could do that anytime that he wanted via the proclamation. So to me, that story was actually kind of disturbing. Yeah. So my last slide is the proclamation. Somebody, I'm sure you guys have all seen this before, where they have, marked out all the prophetic words, all the words of revelation, the revelatory, the, God's mouth, my ear. And when you get rid of 99.9% of this document, it can say the family, all human beings are divine and essential and accepted. Family is love. Love is love. So while we didn't go into everything about the proclamation, I just want everyone to know what it is and what it isn't, and use that as you will.
That's a doctrine I can get behind.
That's right. And I think that's all I have. I think our next one is Bill. Next two, I think.
All right, two really quick stories. This was Religion Unplugged, Russell M. Nelson, and the reinvention of the Mormon Church's public image. I'll just know I covered most of this last week, or maybe it was on Mormonism After Dark, but it might have been the newscast, going into all the things that Russell Nelson changed within the church over a very short period of time. No need to go into that here. But I will just say one thing about this article. They were pointing out that they're trying to change the church to more Christianize it, make it more mainstream, make it appear softer, kinder, more honest, more integrity. And I'll just note the only way you'll ever get there, LDS Church, is if you actually start to act with more compassion and kindness, more honesty and more integrity. As long as your message, as long as your behavior is one thing and what you're trying to accomplish is another, it'll just never stick. And so I'll just say that about this article. And then this last one, slurs, stereotypes, and violence have long plagued members of the Mormon Church. And in this article, what they're trying to say is they were picking up on this event that happened in Michigan. And they're saying, the poor Mormons, they're always picked on. And I'll go into the same spiel I go into all the time. That's a hard thing to get across when your history is full of, and I put it in here, Danites, Whistling Whittlers, Strengthening Church Members Committee, Blood Atonement, Mountain Meadows Massacre, Excommunication of Truth Tellers, Desnat, Danites. I think that's enough. I think that covers most of it. And so I'll just say that it's one thing to say that things happen where Mormons are picked on. And I agree, by the way. There are incidents such as the thing in Michigan that never should happen. It's atrocious. I will also just say Mormons have committed their fair share and continue to commit their fair share of violence in various forms on people outside of orthodoxy. And if you're going to want to note how picked on you are and how persecuted you are, you better be a little more squeaky clean than you're currently doing. And that's all I'll say about that. Any thoughts on either of those? Otherwise, I'll just move on and we can grab the next story. All right.
Yep. I have to say, RFM, we still have a few minutes before our 2-hour mark. Do you want to visit anything that you skipped over, or do we want to save that till later?
That's
Think
fine. I
you're good?
remember this quote from Elder Bricklayer. We must seek validation vertically, not horizontally. I think he also was talking about the law of chastity there.
Yeah, these were 2 little things I just picked up that people were like, who edits these things? Do they realize what they're saying? We must seek validation vertically, not horizontally, right? That was kind of made everybody chuckle. And then President Oaks saying many parents will find that they can turn their families on if they all turn their technologies off. So again, it's like that, fill the holes that were once filled with sex. They need, I don't know, post-Mormon copy editors, something, just so that we can kind of show them, that night in the barn. Remember that one?
Yes, I do remember. That was a funny one. Many parents will find that they can turn their families on, says the leader of the church that's plagued with sexual abuse cases.
Yeah. No, it's just, whatever. Just look away, look away. And then one last thing I thought was really funny. Somebody posted this right in the middle. I think it was the first session. They happened to be in Vegas, and they happened to be at the betting area there where they have all kinds of games and competitions. And then they had conference on. So I don't know. Are there odds? What would you even bet on during conference?
Well, who would be the next counselor? Who would be the new apostle? All the things that we were wondering about.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's true. Or how many times they're going to say Revelation, drinking game. But anyway,
We would have all lost.
There might be odds.
This is a strange thing because this is intentional. I mean, it's not like this was on CBS and the football game had just ended and somebody either was betting large amounts of money and requested it be there, which is its own interesting story, or as you're pointing out, they have betting odds on something on conference, or there's some third reason that I can't even imagine why conference would be playing in one of Heavenly Father's least liked places where the Spirit doesn't dwell, a casino.
Yeah, well, Jesus visited the downtrodden, the lepers, the den of thieves. So maybe somebody just wanted to say they put that on and hope it would influence somebody. I don't know, but I thought that was cute. So, all right, I think
Hey, everybody, can I ask something right now?
Yeah.
There's a rather large number of people watching, 960. We love each and every one of you dearly. But I just wanted to say, could each of you hit the like button, please? And could you also hit the subscribe button? And could you go to radiofreemormon.org? Okay. No, seriously. Go to Radio Free. No, go to Mormon Discussions Podcast, right? .org. I'm not used to saying this one as much. And hit the donate button. Make a donation there, would you please? And if you have any money left over, you can go to
Sloppy seconds. That's right. Mormonish podcast. Always link to the donor box. Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Anyway.
You are so generous. You guys are all so awesome.
Yeah. Isn't she great, folks? Go to Mormonish. Is it .com or what?
Just Mormonish YouTube channel, Mormonish podcast.
And how do they make a donation to you?
In every show, in all the show notes, there's a link to donor box. You can also just search us Mormonish on donor box. So very easy.
Okay, that would be so great, everybody. And if you're like us, if you're watching this on, it streams on 2 channels, on Mormon Discussions and on Mormonish. If you're watching us on Mormonish, would you like it there? And then go to Mormon Discussions and like it, and vice versa. If you're watching on Mormon Discussions, would you like it there? And then go to Mormonish and like it. I know it's asking a lot, but there you have it. Thanks a lot. So
there it is.
Back to
Thanks
you.
for bringing that up. Yeah, I always neglect that part. So we do have a number of things that are on the radar. So I hope this is helpful for you guys so that you can watch things that are coming up. So I just really quickly wanted to again bring up last week on Tuesday. This is on Mormonish podcast on audio and YouTube. This is our entire episode about the comparison of the Family Manifesto and the Family Proclamation. You can find that on Mormonish podcast. And coming up tomorrow night for Mormonish at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, the truth about LDS missionary ad campaigns. You have have seen these ads, right? You have seen these sister missionaries with a plate of cookies. Need a friend? Come to church with us, right? Well, I have been in contact with someone who used to run these ads, was in charge of them for her mission. And there is a method to all this madness and a budget. It's not just a nice missionary getting out there and making their own ad. It's really interesting to dive into this. So this is going to be on Mormonish podcast, audio or video, and it'll be tomorrow night, Tuesday the 7th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Wow.
And then I think you guys have some fantastic things coming up too. Why don't you move your slides and go through those?
I need a friend.
Yeah.
Just Mormonism After Dark. This is last week's episode on Friday, but of course we're there every Friday at 8 p.m. This is a late night show. There's a little more adult humor. There's a little more crassness, but there's also a lot of funny and deep discussions on things going on in Mormonism. Radio Free Mormon and I do this show, and I think it's really picking up, and it's a huge hit. The views have grown up quite a bit over the last couple of months, and we hope that you'll take a chance and watch this with us and enjoy the show.
There's a listener who is complaining about you using too many F-bombs, Bill.
Well, I won't use them here, but I would like to. So I'll just say that this is that show. This is 8 p.m. and after. This is for adult audiences. Don't make sure the kids have gone to bed. And we're going to have a great time. And you get to be part of the show. You get to come into studio.
Yes.
Talk with us. And
anybody with a computer, and presumably you're watching on a computer or something like a computer, you can come into the show. You can talk with us. You can have your name on it. You can have somebody else's name on it. You can have your picture, your actual face showing, or you're not showing at all. And you can come in and we can talk. We can rap, baby.
So there's that. We want to talk about your sessions with conference.
Sorry, that scared me. Okay, yes. These are the sessions. These are the great thumbnails that Bill did. One that's a little bit different on each session. So they're different, different pictures of me. Saturday morning review, October 2025. There's 5 of those babies, and they are testament to the fact that I am a glutton for punishment.
All right, so there's that. And there are 5 of those, and you get the recap and know all the things that RFM saw in conference, so you don't have to watch it yourself. We just put this out. This was actually this morning at 9 a.m. Holy Manipulation, Gaslighting, and High Demand Faith. This was part of the Almost Awakened podcast. Teresa and I put this out this morning. It's, I think, maybe an hour or less. And we give multiple examples of gaslighting, both in unhealthy relationships as well as unhealthy religious systems, so that you can see it and know it, so that when it happens in your life, you know what happened to you. So there's that. And then RFM, do you want to talk about Wednesday's Mormonism Live?
Yes, we're going to be introducing Dallin H. Oaks to the world, because we know he's going to be the next president. And there's been a number of media stories running about this is the next guy who's going to be the president of the Mormon Church. And look at what a great guy he is. And he used to be the president of the university, and he used to be on the Utah Supreme Court, and kind of giving you the whitewashed version that the Mormons want you to know. Well, we're going to tell you all the other side of the story, because Dallin Oaks has a history. He's got a rap sheet like nobody else I've ever seen since Joseph Smith coming into the office of the presidency. And we're going to talk about all those things that he's done that make him so loved and so adored in the post-Mormon world.
Excellent. So there's that. And then I'll just note one last little thing before we go. Teresa, who's my co-host for the Almost Awakened podcast, also my girlfriend, we've been putting out lots of episodes on healthy ways to deal with religious trauma, to deal with unhealthy spiritual systems. And we've been putting out a lot of content over the last few months. And just recently, I got certified as a somatic trauma coach. And we've begun a support group, religious deconstruction and religious trauma support group. And I will put the link in the live chat. I'll also put it in the show notes as well, if folks want to check that out. But that is, see if I can actually do it real quick right here. Nope, I won't be able to do it now. I'll put it in the show notes. But folks, there's a support group. We're capping it out at 15. It'll be held on Tuesday nights. We're going to have it twice a month, and it's only $60 a month. So 15 people in the group, and it'll give you a great chance to have some community, as well as to share experiences of things that have happened to you, and to relate those with others in the group, so that we can all learn tools and things that are helpful to processing that and moving on to a better, healthier second half of life. So there's that.
And is this online?
This will be an online support group. We'll do it via Zoom or some other online conferencing software. And we're really excited. We've already got 7 people signed up for it. So there's 8 more spots to go. And that'll be that. The first one's on October 21st.
Wow,
And what an
wunderbar.
accomplishment, right? Congratulations. I mean, that's amazing. I don't even know where you would find time to do additional education with all of the programs that you just listed. So that's amazing.
Yeah. It's taken a year to do it. I started it last October, and I had 1 year to finish it, and I finished it up 3 weeks before the date came past. So it's been a lot of work. So if I've been a little distant, maybe that's why. So there's that. Maybe not.
RFM,
I
do you
felt
think that Bill
traumatized by
will
your
answer our
distance.
text now? Maybe he will, right?
Maybe. I'm not a texter anyway, so
You're not. We need to move off of our 3-way thread because, yeah, we're always back and forth. And Bill, every once in a while, is like, hey. So, yeah, it's pretty funny. All right. Any final thoughts at all? Or we will just wrap up tonight. I thought it was a great show.
No, I thought it was great. I think the main thing that I got from this show is really Bill has a huge accomplishment with his trauma coach therapy certification. And you, Rebecca, what just incredible what you've done with the temple stuff and thwarting the attempts of the church to shoulder their ways into neighborhoods to build temples without the neighbors knowing until it's too late to do anything about it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens going forward. It's going to be a new day. We will find out. So, all right. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. You were right, Bill. We had like over 900 people listening, watching. This has been amazing. So thank you, Bill, for co-hosting. Thank you, RFM. I think maybe you need to now go like, I don't know, relax after your whole weekend. Take a little break before Wednesday night, right? And
I've got an interview tomorrow. I'm sorry. I got to
my
prepare for that after the show.
You do not stop, but we're glad you don't. So, all right. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see everybody next week, Monday, same time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, with even more news. I can't even imagine what's going to happen next week. Anything. We'll talk about the funeral probably, which, by the way, President Oaks' funeral is tomorrow. I'm guessing it may be live streamed somewhere.
You
I don't
wish.
know those
You
details.
wish. It's actually President Nelson's funeral tomorrow.
Did I say Oaks?
That's why Bill's laughing.
Oh, really? Sorry. I've already moved so far on.
I goof names up all the time. I goofed up Uchtdorf and Oaks, I think, on one of my
Bill's
texts.
going like this. Even the names of old prophets, like vintage cars and classic comic, but yeah, see, it's all good. Anyway, see if you can find it online somewhere. President Nelson's funeral is actually tomorrow. So.
At noon.
All right, everybody. See you next time on the Mormon Newscast. Bye-bye.
bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.